One night, after a particularly exhausting day, Emily was about to crawl into bed when she heard it, an odd, faint noise. It was a soft, scraping sound, like something gently brushing against wood. Her body froze and her heart skipped a beat. Was someone, or something, inside the house? She stood there, feeling like time had stopped, her eyes darting toward the hallway, waiting for a shadow to appear. When nothing happened, she forced a nervous chuckle. "It's probably just the wind," she reassured herself, "or those old pipes creaking again." But as she finally settled into bed, the noise returned, a steady, almost rhythmic scraping. It was faint, barely audible, but enough to stir her imagination. "No more horror movies before bed," she muttered, pulling the blanket over her head. Emily's life had turned into a never-ending cycle of lectures, grading papers, and dealing with a constant stream of student questions. As a history professor, she often lost herself in the past, both in her teaching and in her personal life. Ever since her parents passed away, the house she grew up in had become her responsibility. While the house held countless memories, it also felt like a heavy burden, an old place filled with chores, repairs, and an odd silence that filled the lonely evenings. Between teaching and managing the house, Emily hardly had a moment to catch her breath. Her weekends were consumed by chores like mowing the lawn, fixing leaky faucets, and organizing the attic. But today, she found herself stuck, unable to shake off the eerie noise that lingered in the background and kept her from sleeping. As the strange sound continued, Emily shifted uncomfortably in bed, desperately trying to distract herself. "It's just the wind," she whispered to herself. "Or maybe it's a ghost haunting me for some reason." She chuckled at her own ridiculous thoughts, but the tightness in her chest wouldn't go away. Exhaustion finally won, and even though she felt anxious, she fell into a restless sleep. The next night, as she was getting comfortable in bed, the sound came back, this time louder. A chill ran down her spine. Sitting up, he scanned the dark corners of the room, heart racing. She couldn't shake the thoughts racing through her mind. Was her house haunted? Emily grabbed her phone, frantically searching for logical explanations. Creaking floorboards, temperature changes, old houses make strange noises, she muttered to herself while scrolling through articles, trying to reassure herself. By the fourth night, Emily felt herself starting to crack. Sleep was no longer a comfort. It had turned into a battleground between her rational thoughts and her wild imagination. So, during lunch the next day, she decided to confide in Doug, a colleague from the history department. "Doug, I think I'm losing it," Emily admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "Every night, I hear this scratching noise. It sounds like something is moving around inside the house, but I can't figure out where it's coming from." Doug raised an eyebrow, still chewing on his sandwich. "Scratching? At night?" He smirked. "Maybe your house is haunted. Could be an ancient ghost coming back to get you for some childhood mistake." Emily forced a laugh, but Doug's joke didn't ease her anxiety. Doug grinned and waggled his eyebrows playfully. Maybe it really is a ghost. Later that night, when the noise returned, Emily decided she was done hiding under the covers. She grabbed her flashlight and began her investigation. Taking a deep breath, she stood up, her heart still thudding in her chest. The strange noise, though, continued to tease her, faintly echoing through the walls. Taking a deep breath, Emily tiptoed down the hallway, trying to follow the sound. It led her into the kitchen. Her nerves were on edge as she scanned the room, half expecting something to leap out at her. But nothing happened. She peeked behind the fridge, checked the cabinets, and even moved a few spice jars, but everything looked completely normal. Finally, overtaken her fear. Despite her efforts, the sound kept slipping away from her, leading her from one corner of the house to another. After another hour of searching without success, Emily finally gave up for the night. She sank into a chair, gazing up at the ceiling, feeling as if the house was teasing her. Just when she was about to head to bed, the sound returned, this time louder and more demanding. It echoed through the living room, coming from above. Emily's heart raced as she followed the noise to the loft. The hatch had been untouched for years, cloaked in dust. She hesitated, gripping her flashlight. Could the sound really be coming from up there? Taking a deep breath, she pulled the cord, lowering the creaky ladder. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. The faint scratching grew louder. "Hello?" she called, her voice small in the vast attic. The flashlight's beam flickered across old boxes and forgotten furniture, casting eerie shadows. For a moment, everything was still. Emily almost felt foolish for expecting anything unusual, but curiosity burned in her. The thick silence seemed to mock her hesitation. Taking another deep breath, she climbed. The stale air hit her, heavy with dust and forgotten memories. Just as she was about to retreat, thinking it was all in her imagination, the sound returned, louder, more urgent. A soft shuffling came from the far corner. Her breath caught, a cold sweat breaking on her brow. Instinct screamed for her to flee, but she forced herself to stay. Panic surged when she nearly lost her balance on the ladder. She scrambled back down, slamming the hatch shut and wedging a chair against it. Leaning against the door, she tried to steady her racing heart. The noise faded, leaving her alone with the thudding of her pulse. Morning arrived with streaks of sunlight filtering through the curtains. She couldn't ignore it any longer. Gripping a makeshift weapon, a table leg, she crept downstairs. The house was still shrouded in darkness. Retrieving her father's old baseball bat, she felt its reassuring weight in her hands. She moved cautiously toward the source of the noise. Something shifted beneath a pile of boxes, sending dust swirling into the air. Her flashlight trembled as she stepped closer. The sound grew louder, as if whatever was hidden there had been waiting for her. "Come out or I'm calling the police," she yelled. The noise stopped. Silence settled over the room, except for the distant creaks of the old house. Frustrated, she searched for a lamp. As she clicked it on, a sudden thud sent a jolt of fear through her. Heart pounding, she fled down the hall but stopped. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. She had to face whatever was in the loft. Summoning courage, Emily turned back. The stairs creaked under her weight. The darkness loomed ahead, thick with anticipation. Movement caught her eye. She crouched, peering behind the boxes. The light revealed a small, round shape nestled in the shadows. Emily froze. Could it really be? Memories flooded back. Childhood days with her pet tortoise, Tubby. He had been her steady companion, a comforting presence in an otherwise chaotic young life. Then, one day, he was gone. Despite frantic searches, no one knew where he had disappeared to. Now, after all these years, Emily found herself staring at him. Her breath hitched, trembling hands reached for the weathered shell. It was Tubby. It had to be. Tubby? Her voice quivered, tears spilling over. Sunlit afternoons flashed before her, watching him navigate the garden, the joy each time he emerged from his shell, and then the heartache of losing him. Yet here he was, alive after 30 long years. Emily sat there, dumbfounded, cradling the tortoise in her hands. How had Tubby survived all this time, hidden and forgotten? His shell was worn, but he was undeniably alive. How are you still alive?" she whispered. At first, Tubby remained tucked inside his shell, but after a moment, he let out a soft, squeaky sound. Emily's heart swelled at the familiar noise. "Hey, buddy, do you remember me?" Slowly, Tubby peeked out, blinking up at her. There were no grand gestures, just a quiet moment bridging the past and present. For a long time, Emily held him close, overwhelmed. The strange noises that had terrified her now made sense, and fear melted away, replaced by deep comfort. She had been afraid of something that turned out to be her long-lost friend. Memories surged back, her parents laughing as they watched her play with Tubby, the way he followed her in the yard. He had always been slow and steady, mirroring the simpler life she once had. Sitting in the dusty attic, she felt nostalgia wash over her. It wasn't just about the tortoise. It was about reconnecting with a part of herself she had forgotten. She held Tubby tightly, grateful for this unexpected reunion. In the days that followed, the house, once large and silent, felt alive. Tubby became her shadow, appearing in unexpected places, under the couch, behind the curtains, basking in the sunlight. The soft shuffling that had once terrified her now brought a smile. She laughed at how she had let fear take over. But beneath the laughter was a deeper realization. Tubby wasn't just a pet. He was a living reminder of the past, of the innocence and joy she hadn't realized she had lost. Tubby, blissfully unaware of his impact, continued his steady journey. And with each step, Emily felt something shift inside her, a warmth, a sense of wholeness she hadn't known was missing. It struck her as ironic that the slowest creature she had ever known could bring such profound comfort. The emptiness in the house since her parents' passing was gone, replaced by Tubby's familiar presence. The silence, once heavy and suffocating, now felt warm. The gentle thuds of Tubby's movements, the soft rustle of his tiny feet, it was as if the house itself had come back to life. Even the sunlight seemed to shine a little brighter. Emily found herself talking to Tubby. "You really scared me, buddy," she chuckled. "I thought you were a ghost." Tubby blinked slowly, as if holding secrets she had yet to uncover. Perhaps it was his simplicity that brought things into focus. He moved at his own pace, unaffected by the rush of the world. A lesson Emily realized she needed. Over time, Tubby became more than just a relic of childhood. He was a symbol of resilience. He had survived decades hidden in the loft, living off who knows what. And somehow, Emily felt like she was surviving too. Life had a strange way of surprising her. Tubby's return was one of those gifts she never saw coming. Every time she looked at him, warmth filled her heart. His steady presence reminded her to slow down, to appreciate the small things, to let go of fear. Tubby had found his way back to her, just as she was beginning to rediscover herself, and with that realization, Emily knew, no matter what lay ahead, she wouldn't be facing it alone.